Anyway, man, how are you?
Good.
This is long overdue. Through
Yeah,
an
we talked about this a few months ago now.
Yeah, long overdue, man. But I'm glad to finally get you on. It's always crap
Good to
having
be here.
having gaps, having people haven't been on for a while. Anyway, let's go straight. Well, actually, first thing, because this is quite cool. As we started, literally, as I called you, we went over $16,000.
Yeah, I saw that. I was looking at the I mean, we can talk about this when you start recording if you want, but
We're recording, bro. We're on.
oh,
This
okay.
is it. We're in.
Uh sure, then let's chat about it. I was looking at the 2016 comparison and no, it's crazy. Like if we stay above 16K, a bit above 16K in 2020, then this is then this run has gotten faster than late 2016 and going into 2017.
It's faster.
It will be if we hold above 16K for November December.
Weird. It feels slower though.
Well, 27, yeah. Well, compared to late 2016 when things were
Hmm.
starting to get going, I guess 2017 obviously is when we went crazy. But another thing to keep note of, like when we finally tapped all time high last time, which I believe was very early January. We didn't break it, but we got within a few bucks of it. It then took another 4 months to really get through it sustainably.
Right. Is that was that the 1200 ish high?
1200 ish, I think, was the ETF, like all that stuff with the ETF in March. I think we hit like 1130 or something in January. And the high was 1173 if you look at Bitstamp.
You think that's gonna? Do you think it's gonna be the same this time?
I mean, it would. I've always had this like it annoys me when things are that similar. It's like, is it really that easy? Do you really just have to look at the past cycle and scale it to today? But so far, I mean, it's playing out extremely similarly, and
Mm.
it felt the same in 2016 too. Like 2012, like felt similar to 2016. Like in early 2016, 400 was the new four, and then the second half of 16 played out just like the second half of 12. It's crazy.
Yeah. I wonder how much during those periods. I mean, you'll know more about this than me. How much during each of those new all time highs, or the way the patterns play out, is that it's controlled by whales, like fully understanding where highs should be, and maybe this time is a bit different because the trading is it's a lot more complicated now. I mean, I don't understand how futures and things like that work, but we do have futures derivatives. We do have a lot more players in the market. I just wonder if it's a different market this time.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the market structure is quite different this time. It's not. It shouldn't be, at least, as dominated by retail. You have CME and instruments that the traditional quant funds and other traditional markets players are used to, and they can jump into this easily now, and they are, and yet we're seeing very similar price action. I mean, I said this in the last cycle too, that that the market is much more developed than it had been in the 2011 to 2013 era, but um, even though things developed substantially, the price action seems to feel similar.
Hmm. So it's a really interesting time. I was training with my personal trainer today. We're on lockdown, obviously, so we've got
Yeah.
another 3 weeks of lockdown. And so, like with my last lockdown, I just meet my personal trainer. We go down into the park, and he brings a bunch of gear and makes me hang off trees and drag big heavy bags around the field like a fucking idiot. But he's a Bitcoiner as well. That's how we met. So back
Nice.
in, yeah, no, it's really. Do you know what? He is like, for me, he is the guy who settles me on Bitcoin. He's the one who kind of grounds me with it all a lot of the time. So when I put weird things out on Twitter and that really fucking wind people up, it usually comes from conversations with someone like him. Um, but he reached out to me. Well, he reached out to me through an accountant back in. It might have been 18. It might have been 17. I can't remember. He was looking to get into Bitcoin. And he bought a little bit, and he's been stacking all the way. Yeah, and he's got a nice stack now. He's doing well. But he was saying to me this morning, it was like, because he's finally on his average buys, he's in profit because he had bought at over 12k UK price when his first buy. So you're talking during the
14ish or something. Yeah,
I think back there, and I think the exchange rate was different back then, but he's been buying from the bottom as well, and like his average buys, you know, it's a good place, but he's comfortably in the green on his average buy now, like by a few thousand, and it's a really nice position for him to be in. Like I think everybody who's, you know, bought in a high, when they get into the green, it's really good. But he was like, so what are you going to do, Pete? Like if he hits 20k, you're going to sell a bit? And I was like, I don't think I am, because my real struggle with it, Dan, is like, if I think every time I think I try and time the market, I'll get it wrong. So if I try and sell at 20k, it might shoot straight through and go to 30, and I'll be like, fuck, so I better buy that back, and then it will drop it. I just play that stupid game.
Right.
So I'm now in that place where I'm like, the only number I care about going up is my number of sats, right? I don't want that number to go down, but
yeah,
I don't care about my $/pound amount going up and down, because I'll fuck it up. I will definitely do it.
Yeah, no, trading is obviously that's a game for professional traders, and even then, I think a lot of people who think that they're long-term profitable probably aren't, unless they're keeping extremely detailed records and actually know that. So yeah, I mean, I would say like have a plan for yourself going in and stick to it, because the swings will mess with your mind.
Yeah, I think I went after my massive fuck up where I had a load and then lost the load in mining and other things. All I've done is accumulate, and I've just Matt Odell, stack sats, keep growing. That's all I've done. And I decided to go really long term. I said I spend a little bit here or there, like give some away and stuff like that, small amounts. But my general like primary stack, I said I'm going to do 3 halvings before I ever consider like a solid sale, which is, we've done one. So I've got about another, I think, 8 to 9 years before I will consider it. Now my mind might change, right? My mind might change. But...
Yeah, no, I hear that. When I kind of first got into Bitcoin in 2011, I said to myself, it was okay, this is like a 10-year kind of moonshot position, and I wasn't gonna think too hard about it until 2021. Well, turns out I've thought hard about it for for a lot of those in between years, but still, I think that it's a long-term position, and I've never understood people who take these positions in Bitcoin for like a 20 or 30% gain, right? Like somebody who treats it like an ordinary stock trade. Like the volatility is huge. Like, why are you in it for 20 or 30%? Like you should be either swinging for the fences or it's probably not the play for you.
Yeah, fucking morons. Well, listen though, but I think I was on with Nova Gratz and Dan Moorhead yesterday, and we were talking a lot about the things that have changed this year. In that, more than ever, right now, I feel like Bitcoin is definitely a credible investment now for very wealthy people and for businesses. It's been like, I call it in some ways, it was happening anyway, but like the Michael Saylor effect, I think has been huge. And maybe it would have happened anyway. Maybe I'm just like, I'm not sure if Square go in and buy 50 million without Saylor having done it first. I'm not sure if that was on the cards anyway. I don't know. And I don't know if like these other kind of rich billionaires who were talking about owning a bit of Bitcoin or buying Bitcoin would have been doing it anyway. But it feels like now I'm beyond that point of worrying about the regulatory environment. Yes, I think we should be concerned about being over-regulated in terms of our privacy, etc. But I don't think a ban's coming, so that doesn't worry me. Like there's not anything really that's like before. I would have been thinking, right, I don't want to put too much of my money in this because what if it dies in some way? That's just not on the cards for me anymore.
Yeah, I mean, this gets back to I don't know. So I felt that way, I guess, out of the 2011 bubble. Like it, screamed to 32 and then back down to below two. And it was so like a 94% drawdown. And my feeling then was, I believe in the fundamental properties of this thing, but is it really going to catch on in the market? Could it die? Could governments ban it? Could it just the mind share just not be there, and it takes 20 years for people to care? And then the 2013 run, spring 2013, you started to see big name VCs get involved, and that to me was okay. Like there's enough broad mind share out there that governments can't ban it without a bunch of political backlash. And it's just harder for it to die once it gets that spark. It's funny. I feel like everyone's first bubble, they feel like in the bear market, they feel like it could die, and they don't have as much faith in the resurgence. But once you go through a few of them, the subsequent bear markets are easier, to see that there's a lot of staying power, and it's just kind of a matter of time.
How did you get in? Like, because you say 2011, that's super early. Where did you discover it?
I think I saw. So I saw the Slashdot post of Bitcoin crossing $1 in I think February 2011, and I took a quick look, and I was like, oh, okay, this is probably trash. It's reminded me of beans and flues from the early 2000s, early internet money attempts, and like, okay, this is another one. And then when it crossed, I think $6, like 2 months later, I took another look and found the Bitcoin Talk forums, and read some posts like, wow, this is totally different. And that remember that was 2-3 years after the financial crisis. So I was looking into gold. Gold was on its run to all-time highs at the time, and I don't know. I wanted to be a gold bug, but could never do it, just because I'm just gonna buy this chunk of metal. Like, why?
Dude, I nearly did it this year. I was like, right, I've got enough Bitcoin. I've got a lump of cash hidden in a secure location in case there's a run on the banks. I need a bit of cash. What I don't have is gold.
Yeah.
If the zombie apocalypse happens and we lose power, I need a bit of gold. And so I looked into it. I looked into it, and I was like, firstly, I was trying to find where to buy it, how to get it delivered, like where will I was like, fuck this, and I just bought some more Bitcoin.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to be a gold bug because of what was happening in markets and monetary policy globally and all that. But gold was just not just disconnected from the real economy, and so much difficulty with transporting and storage and all that, and it just doesn't make sense in our electronic economy. And I discovered Bitcoin while having those thoughts of wow, this is perfect.
Well, do you know what the killer for me was? It was like, okay, I've got this gold, and it's so obvious, right? Okay, I can buy this gold. I have this value, this lump of metal which has value, and I was cool with that. But then somebody said, "Well, what are you gonna do when you want to sell it?" I was like, okay, what do I do? Do I have to sell it? Do I have to like that whole thing? Do I shave bits off and sell bits? Do I sell it to a company that I bought it from? What price will I get? How do I then get it to them? And I was like, shit, this is the great thing about Bitcoin, is I can buy it and sell it instantly. I can transfer it instantly. It makes so much more sense. So, and then somebody was like, well, you could just get a gold ETF. And I was like, oh, yeah, but I want the actual gold. I couldn't have both. With Bitcoin, I get both. I get the instant liquidity, and I get to hold it. Kind of.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny when people make the argument that you can just hold your gold in a gold money account or whatever. Just don't get it. If you're holding an asset as fundamental insulation or an escape valve from the existing monetary system, it can't be in the existing monetary system. It can't be held by those custodians. It can't be confiscatable by existing monetary sovereigns. And yeah, Bitcoin provides the escape that really nothing else does.
Yeah, and another thing came. I was talking to my brother about it the other night, because he was like, he still has some Bitcoin, right? A very, very small amount, but back in the previous bubble, he had a little play with Bitcoin and Ethereum, and made a bit, lost a bit, but he kept some. And he was saying, because of his savings, he was like, I was thinking about getting a bit more, maybe getting some gold. And he was telling me about, he said, the problem I have with gold is like you don't really know how much there is, right? He said, I've heard rumors that some governments are lending gold to other governments but holding on to it, and then they're lending it to other governments. You don't really know who's got what or who holds it. And I was like, Neil, let me tell you something about Bitcoin. If you run a node, you can run the numbers, dude. So like, he's convinced, and it's always been that thing. It's like I've talked about this before. It was like that migration from CDs to MP3s. I couldn't do it, Dan. For a couple of years, I still bought CDs. I've got a fucking cupboard there with over 1,000 CDs that have not been touched for years. And I bought them. I carried on buying them for a couple of years. And then eventually I was like, okay, I'm going to MP3s. And I think a lot of people with Bitcoin, that the biggest leap of faith is that this thing that they don't know what it is, that is digitally representative, is worth money. They just don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And I think it's largely a generational thing. Like, my dad kind of thinks the same way I do broadly on like macro and monetary topics, but he's like a lot more uneasy with the digital intangible aspect of Bitcoin. Obviously I and every Bitcoiner kind of thinks that's a feature, recognizes it as the strong feature it is that enables things like, easy, self-custody, or not easy, but possible self-custody, encrypting and backing up your keys, obviously instant transportability. Like these are all like key things for like self-sovereign money. But yeah, it definitely takes time to get there. But it's like, okay, so this is a generational thing mostly, I presume. So people who would be gold bugs if they were older are going to be Bitcoin bugs. It's just this is a generational shift that's playing out.
It's always the same arguments over. Do you know what we need? We need a website which makes the case for Bitcoin. It covers all this shit.
Well, I thought that for a while. Yeah.
And you finally did. Before we get onto that, let's go back a touch, because you're like proper OG. If you're 2011, like 2013 people are OG, you're like proper OG. What's it been like living through it all? Because I can consider myself, what are we, 2020? I'm like 3.5 years into this, and it's gone quick, but it also feels like a decade, and it's been brilliant and bruising and emotional. Like, so much shit has happened in my life relating to Bitcoin that it's hard to really comprehend and get my head around. But you've years before me. What's it been like for you living through it all?
Yeah, it feels like forever. I don't know, like like it's all kind of burned into my mind at this point. Like, I got married at $2. I, had my first kid at $4, my second kid at $400. It's like that. The chart is burned against my life for better or worse. But seeing, I don't know, I guess like 2011 through kind of early 2013 was like a special time, because it was this thing that like everyone was on, mostly on Bitcoin Talk at the time, and everyone was kind of discussing the same topics you discuss now. Like, where does Bitcoin sit in the monetary system? Bitcoin versus gold. Is it really going to eat gold? Like, at the time, it was like we were just hoping to get to price parity with silver. Never mind market cap parity. But it was a small community, and it was kind of a pipe dream. Like, we all kind of believed it could happen, but it was 5 orders of magnitude away or whatever. So the vibe was different. And now here we are, kind of hitting those targets, and kind of the same conversation, but now it's global, which is obviously very like vindicating, because nobody cared about Bitcoin early on. Like, the big marketing effort, I think, on Bitcoin Talk in like 2012 or something was we could try to get Zero Hedge to mention Bitcoin one time, that would broaden the horizons.
They mention it all the time these days. What were the
Yeah.
what were the like any key kind of moments where you, because obviously in 2011 there's a lot, you've got to put a lot of faith in something that's very new, very, yeah, a lot of people are dismissive of, that has a lot of risks. But like, what were the key moments where you were like, holy shit, this is a big moment. This has really changed.
Well, it really was that 2013, that spring
Yeah.
2013 ramp out of, it was like I said, we hit the low of like 191, 1.91 in November 2011. Then, doubled off that pretty quickly, and then, hung around 4 in early 2012. 2013, we're finally breaking out, above 10, and and you know people were taking notice. Like this was, Fred Wilson, Mark Andreessen, people, people who, weren't just anons on Bitcoin Talk. We're starting to talk about, Bitcoin more positively, and starting to realize its fundamental properties, right, and talk about them. That, it wasn't just some like flash in the pan, trading instrument. That, it really was an ideal, form of money. And obviously there's a strong payments narrative at that time. So I think for me it was like, okay, once it was clear that that there was serious mind share around Bitcoin in, in the broader world, I was like, wow, this is actually going to happen.
Wow. Did you do any of those regret purchases, like spend 10 Bitcoin on a burger or crazy things?
I have I have my UPS on my computer right here, which I paid like 1.5 Bitcoin for. It's is one of them. Yeah, and yes, I do have a few of those.
Yeah, that was again a conversation I had with my PT this morning. I was like, my biggest problem is that I don't know. I'm scared to spend it now. I'm scared to spend it because what if I miss something else? Like, what if I spend it and it goes up more? And so in the end, it's like, well, is it actually then worthless because I never spend it? It's just worth.
Yeah.
My kids will get it and they'll be like, Dad, why the fuck didn't you sell this? And they'll spend it all and buy a Lamborghini or something.
Yeah, I wrote a quick piece on this with Chao Wang from Sorry a couple of years ago, just about like Bitcoin's store of value thesis, and part of it, we asserted was that it has to credibly be spendable, or I guess in the language of that piece, we said convertible. So you need to be able to trade it or spend it, and you need to, like, obviously it can't exist in a vacuum without, that ability, or else, yeah, you get into these like paradoxes like you just described. But if all you really need is a trading market for it, and then it is convertible to the real economy, with low friction, and then it satisfies its kind of credible threat against, the existing monetary system.
All right, man. Well, listen, let's talk about Case Bitcoin. CaseBitcoin.com. Anyone listening, go and check this out by Dan. It's brilliant. It's fucking brilliant. How long has it taken you?
Well, let's see. I guess I started working on it about a year ago, but it's been kind of off and on. And then, yeah, I mean, 2020 obviously just kind of accelerated accelerated the need to get this done. Yeah, it's kind of the genesis was, realizing just something that's bothered me forever is that it's hard to get educated on Bitcoin. It's there are a lot of rabbit holes to go down. Like, each persona is different. What kind of arguments resonate with people are different depending on where they're coming from. And there was also no like good resource that kind of contextualized Bitcoin against the macro environment more broadly. So, Case Bitcoin kind of tries to solve, both those problems. So, showing where Bitcoin sits against other macro assets, and also putting various government stats on there, M2, Fed Reserve balance sheet, all these things that came to the fore in 2020. And then on the qualitative side, uh, there's put together a library of, currently 100 plus, great Bitcoin pieces from dozens of authors. um, to really provide the resources for people to go down the rabbit hole in one place. And right now the library is just a collection organized by topic, of all of those pieces. But eventually, this can become targeted to different personas. If you're a fund manager, an academic, even a journalist, like looking at how to get up to speed on this. Well, the best way is to read a number of the great pieces that people put together over the last 10 years.
Yeah, so I really like the thing on the front page with you've got the days above a certain price.
Yes. So we're let's see, refresh here because the price is moving. I guess we're at 16,066 as we speak, and Bitcoin has spent only 14 days above the current price level. So we have that chart, and Bitcoin versus traditional assets up there on the homepage, and then a deeper charts page where you can kind of play around with Bitcoin's ROI versus other store of value assets. And like, it's funny, it just crushes every other asset on almost any time frame.
Yeah,
So,
it's highly compelling.
Yeah, when you put it into perspective, like people think that there's still this narrative out there that oh, Bitcoin was a bubble in 2017 and that's that. Well, no, it's not. Like, come look at the data.
Do you still deal with like, what are the kind of common arguments against it you're still dealing with?
I mean, so for people who haven't looked into it, you get, oh, Bitcoin has no intrinsic value, or governments will ban it, or it's too volatile. Like, those are probably the three biggest ones. Which bring it's like another thing I'll be releasing on Case Bitcoin soon, is a critiques section that kind of goes through these arguments one by one. I'll try to steel man the argument and provide the rebuttals, because I think people just kind of need to go through this process of convincing themselves of the rebuttals to all these arguments.
I think of all of them, of the three you said, the volatility one I still think is relevant, because that it is something that's hard to get used to. Like, I don't care anymore, right? I'm used to it. You're used to it. For years of watching it, you'd get used to it. But like, I know, for example, if my brother puts some money, say he put 25% of his savings in, he's going to be looking all the time, dude. And if he sees a 20% drop, he's going to panic, and he's going to panic what his wife thinks. That is relevant. But I also think in terms of companies, what Michael Saylor did was truly incredible. But there was a period straight after the price dropped again. And we're talking millions of dollars here. And I wonder if other companies will be like, if companies start getting into Bitcoin and we peak at say whatever the price is, say it's $100,000 for the sake of the argument, and then we drop back to 30,000, and there's some companies buying in on their way up, they've got questions to answer to their board.
Yeah, and I mean, my take on that would be to view it as definitely in the high risk, high volatility portion of your portfolio, and position sizing is everything. Like, if your position is such that you can't handle that volatility, then your position size is wrong. But by the same token, like, so I guess that the most salient kind of volatility related argument is, okay, you're telling me this is a store of value, but its volatility is through the roof. That's not a store of value. It's like, well, maybe I would class it as an up and coming store of value, or a store of value that's maturing. It's something that has the fundamental properties to be a store of value, more durably once it is higher market cap. So then it's just like, okay, like, that path from here to there is going to be volatile. So position this in your portfolio accordingly, and maybe in 10 years, when its volatility is a lot lower, you can look at it differently.
Have you got a price target for this run?
So for every run, my kind of mental targets have been a lot smaller than reality ended up being. I think, I mean, it's funny, like, early on, I remember thinking by 20, when I initially discovered Bitcoin, I was thinking, okay, by 2021, it would be awesome if it was above $1,500. And I got to that target because I looked at it as, okay, it can either, you can either think of it as a medium of exchange or as a store of value. If you think of it as a medium of exchange, you can then like look at the velocity of money and all that, and calculate that if it took 10% of black market transactions, it would be worth $1,500 on the store.
2021.
Yeah.
Dude, if
Off
we have
by at least an order of magnitude.
if we have a crash and we hit $1,500 in 2021, I'll be thinking of you. I'll be like, you were right.
Well,
you were right, dude.
The anyway, for this cycle, if you look at multiples of prior all-time highs, I think 2017 was, or rather 2013 was 30x the prior all-time high. 2017 was 20x the prior all-time high.
So where do you go from 10x?
I don't know. So if it's 10x this time, I mean, obviously that's a huge number. And the counter argument is clearly that okay, it's much bigger now. It takes a lot more money to really move it. But that's always the counter argument. Like that was true last time too. I think there's a huge range of possibility here.
Yeah, I mean, I think $200,000 would be amazing. Of course, it'd be freaking amazing. Yeah. Another thing I'm thinking about, and I don't know if this is relevant, but if we hit like a crazy price like that, there's a lot of people who are suddenly sitting on like a serious amount of money. Even somebody with like 1 Bitcoin. And I wonder if people will be thinking, right, now's the time to get out, and we will see a lot of down pressure afterwards. Or is that the same argument every cycle?
Yeah, I mean, and it happens. Like obviously, every cycle we've gone down at least 80% once we hit the peak. But obviously, you never know where the peak is. This cycle is interesting though because there are a lot more professional money managers involved. So traders, macro traders, and then just people from traditional markets able to express their view via CME futures. So maybe that puts some downward pressure relative to what would otherwise happen. Maybe we get a slower rise. Maybe it's not quite as high as it otherwise would have been. But again, I've made similar arguments about prior cycles and been surprised. So.
Oh man, I think it's going to be a very interesting 18 months. I think let's say 40 months. I think this year and next year is going to be super interesting. I think like the other thing is so many things are lined up right now. So
yes,
we have a very mature environment, a much more mature environment than we had before. We've got weird global issues going on. The economic situation globally is really, really perilous. I don't know if you heard my interview with Lynn Alden, but it keeps sticking with me. She talked about this debt to GDP ratio of 130%, 130 or 135%, 130%, and she called that the event horizon, where you can't come back from that. She said 51 or 52 nations have reached that, have seen a devaluation of their currency. The only one that hasn't has been Japan, which has their weird stagnation thing. And one of the Winklevoss, Tyler Cameron, tweeted it the other day that the US debt to GDP ratio is 130%. So the obvious way to pay it off is through inflation, and I think it was what's his name? What's the Fed guy? Jerome Powell. Yeah, who said they're targeting inflation 4%. Multiple years of 4% inflation could be coming. So a lot of things are lining up, which support Bitcoin. Sure. Are you feeling that?
Absolutely. It's like Bitcoin was born in the great financial crisis, but it was just a toy. And now we have another crisis with like kind of similar monetary outcomes, and it's not a toy anymore. Like it is the escape valve now. Like this can actually absorb the flows, and people broadly are better understanding the arguments for Bitcoin in this environment. So yeah, I absolutely feel like things are lining up. Like to your point about or Lynn's point about debt to GDP. Like I mean, if you look at how the government's going to have to roll the debt. So just kind of issue more bonds to pay the interest on existing bonds. Like there's only one way out long term. You can argue about like will we get stimulus or not, or how much it's going to be. It doesn't matter. Like the money printer has to go burr no matter what. It was before COVID. Like this just accelerates things. Uh, so yeah, they're not going to. They can't let there be a deflationary crash. Like it's too far gone. You can't just default on the debt. That will. You could get a 1930s scenario. So the only other way out is through inflation. People are going to look to escape the inflation through hard assets. Like Bitcoin is kind of the most liquid, frictionless hard asset, and it's tiny currently compared to other asset classes that absorb those flows. So obviously that sets up a great scenario for Bitcoin.
And the default, you say they can't default. Do you think that's because the USG has to protect the dollar's reserve status, and you have down rate gradings and ratings of it as is it because of that?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, it's kind of a nuclear bomb to the financial system if the U.S. defaulted on its debt with I don't know, it's 14 trillion or something in bonds outstanding.
Wow, shit. Okay,
maybe more actually, because the debt is 27 trillion. So yeah.
So we had a weird thing this week. We got this guy. Oh, what's his name? Rishi Sunak. He's essentially. Hold on, I can't remember his bloody job title. Chancellor of the Exchequer. Chancellor of the Exchequer. He's kind of in charge of the numbers here. And what he was saying, I'm going to dig it up, but he's talking now about how we pay for COVID. And so, have you heard of the Chancellor of the Exchequer?
No, I haven't. Yeah.
So our Prime Minister lives at number 10 Downing Street, and I'm pretty sure Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, lives next door. But he's essentially in charge of the numbers for the country, the decision making. So when we've gone into lockdowns, he was making the announcements in terms of furlough schemes and where money's going to support businesses and such and such. We've had a massive investment of money going into the arts, for example, because all the theatres are closed. And they're all screwed because they're all closed. So they've just stuck millions into the theatres. But there's people needing money in every direction. There's all the lower league football clubs. Below the Premier League, we have all these other football clubs that are struggling. So everyone in every direction needs money. But he started to come out and start and talk about how we start to pay for this now. And the first policy rumour is basically it's a middle class raid where you have we have income tax bans, of which predominantly the top ban I think is 40%, but I think if you earn over 100,000 you pay a higher rate. But we have only 20% on capital gains. I don't know what it's like what is it in the US? Do you have a different capital gains?
Yeah, it depends on if you're short term or long term and what your income bracket is. But yeah, it basically ranges from 15% to what your ordinary income rate is. Right.
Well, they're thinking of lining it up with income tax. So basically, with capital gains, there's no benefit outside of income. So some people could end up seeing a massive increase in what they'll be paying.
I think that's going to happen here. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's again fucked because there's a lot of people who have invested in things like sensibly invested their money, whether it's Bitcoin, whether it's property, whatever it is. They've sensibly invested their money, and now they're going to pay a higher tax on their returns. It's as ever the prudent people are being the ones being punished.
Right.
And I think we're going to just see more and more of this.
Taxation is one way they're going to try to get out of it, but it's I mean, yeah, that like whole like tax the rich, blah blah blah, like that's more kind of narrative in my mind than anything else. Like that, there's just not enough money to tax to solve the debt problem. You have to inflate it away.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't want to be selfish because I don't want to see people go through difficulty. I guess inflating in a way is good for Bitcoin holders, but higher capital gains is bad. So you probably get screwed either way.
Yeah, I mean the cap gains. It's funny because you could look at that another way, in that if cap gains is higher, that just incentivizes hodling for longer.
Yeah. Yeah, or maybe just need to find a way of, I don't know. I guess for me, I'd have to be better with my privacy and better with my coin joining and finding a way to sell my Bitcoin that so nobody knows.
Yeah, that's it's hard to do.
But I mean, I wouldn't recommend that because that's illegal. Everyone should pay their tax. No, fuck the government. I also interested to know just trying to track these kind of messages that are coming out. Was it who's talking about the Great Reset? Was it the IMF?
I believe so. Yeah, I haven't read all the recent documents on that, but yeah, I mean, there's talk of Bretton Woods too, obviously central bank digital currencies. So this is a time of kind of transforming monetary policy globally.
Yeah, the Great Reset translates as "We're about to fuck you."
Yeah, so I don't know I've tweeted it a few times, but in I don't know 2013 or 2014, I think the IMF came out with a document, where they're kind of talking about how to deal with the debt situation. Like this was on the back of the eurozone crisis and the Greek default and all that, and like quite serious questions about whether the eurozone will break up in response to all this monetary stuff. And they came out with a they called it an option that something they would potentially do in the next crisis, and they called it a one-off capital levy, where they basically say in central banker speak that or bureaucrat speak that they will just take money out of people's bank accounts suddenly. That this is one way to deal with a debt crisis. That they will basically shut the banks down suddenly. Give everybody they didn't specify a number, but 10%, 20% haircut, whatever it is, just straight out of your bank account. And they theorized in this document that if they do that one time, and if it's sudden such that people can't escape it, then it could work. And my attitude to that is, well, okay, here's a fantastic reason to put some money in Bitcoin. Like it is the escape from things like that.
Well, there's a double reason. One to protect it, but the day that happens, the day they do the haircut, the price of Bitcoin flies.
Yeah, I mean, that was the narrative in 2013 too, with all the Greek stuff.
Well, yeah. I mean, what was that? Was it 50% of everything you had above 100,000 euros they took? Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. It was fun. There was a guy who had something like, I don't know, 800,000 or 900,000 euro in a Greek bank account, and he was a Bitcoiner, and he like, I remember this in 2013. He posted screenshots of his bank account, and he got destroyed. Like they just took the money. They took the money, and I think they converted it to shares of the banks, which I've actually seen Bitcoin exchanges do exactly that. But
yeah, that's true.
In response to hacks, but yeah, whole other thing when that's happening.
Well, I mean that's like slightly different. I mean, Bitfinex did that, didn't? But didn't they make everyone good?
They did, but for a time, the equity in the platform that they gave victims of the hack was not as valuable as the money that was taken. So there was a time when people were underwater on that, but in the end, yes, that worked out quite well.
I'm pretty sure that Greece thing. I always get confused what happened in Greece and Cyprus because they were slightly different. But
sorry, yeah, I might have misspoke. I think that was Cyprus.
Yeah, but what I do remember, but I remember the Greek stuff as well because some stuff did come out that I don't know if you know about this, but I'm pretty sure the Greeks get 14, they used to get 14 months pay a year. So you used to get a double month in Christmas and a double month in the summer. So an extra month to pay for Christmas, extra month to pay for their summer, something like that. So that was thing they had. But I think it came down from the IMF. The IMF, like, it was the terms of the loan. If you want this loan, you've got to take a haircut. Oh, really? Yeah, and it was just like, whoa. And I think if I'm assuming something's going to go wrong over the next decade, whether it starts next year or the year after. I mean, I'm assuming it'll start slowly. Perhaps start with like austerity programs, which we've, by the way, had in the UK, and they've not been popular and haven't really worked. Then I think it'll be a tax raid, and then I think potentially they just still won't have enough money because they're still going to be trying to stimulate. They're still going to be trying to spend on government programs. I don't think anyone's come out and said, "You know what we need? You know what we need? We need smaller government."
Yeah, that seems obvious to me, especially when in the U.S. you have this election where each side just hates the other side. It's like, come on, guys, isn't it obvious that the solution is it shouldn't matter as much who the president is? Just make government smaller, so that's the case. Anyway, picking up on what you just said about kind of how to solve this and austerity and whatnot, I don't think the austerity narrative is there this time. I think this time the narrative is MMT. It's like, actually, okay, we can get ourselves out of this by kind of taking a different view of how government money printing interacts with the economy, and make it much more politically palatable.
Well, with the CBDCs, M&T becomes a little bit easier, but some of that shit's been some of that's been scaring the shit out of me, because I was looking into these CBDCs. Like, I was seeing people talking about it. I was like, oh, that's just like some government stable coin, blah blah blah. I won't have to use it. Then what I didn't realize is that actually what the end game is. The end game is likely no physical cash. It's issued by the central bank. You don't ever actually own money. You have a representation of it. But it scared me in situations like, okay, so for example, say if you get a speeding fine or a parking fine, they just deduct it immediately from your account.
Right.
Which doesn't allow you to time it. So it's like, okay, that's pretty fucking scary. But then it's like, hold on, they can do anything then. They can take the money at any point. They can seize it. They can tax it. Yeah. They can just do whatever the fuck they want. And you never have any money of your own. It's always theirs. And then that is like some of those like dystopian socialist, and I don't like using the term socialist because I think it's used a lot and it's used in the wrong way. I think people misuse it, but those kind of like dystopian socialist kind of ideas actually start to seem like they're coming. It freaks me out, dude.
Yeah, no, it freaks me out too. I would be a lot more freaked out if Bitcoin didn't exist. It does feel like there's we do have this this potential to escape. But yeah, the central banks want to do CBDCs to make monetary policy easier. That includes things like negative interest rates that can be just kind of easily implemented at the at the layer of the money itself, like in your bank account itself, which is very attractive when you to governments when they've got these big debt holes to fill.
Yeah, so let's set it up. So we can have CBDCs where we never control the money. We're going to have health passports, so that if you want to travel from one country to another, you have to prove that you've had the COVID vaccination, because they want to protect. But somebody said to me, actually, you might even get that locally if you want to go into the gym or the they don't want people getting infected. So actually, then you therefore have tracking for everywhere you go. And I was like, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Most of the time I'm like, yeah, no, it's just bullshit. But we are seeing this push towards it. And it's funny you say, well, I don't know what I would have done without Bitcoin. The funny thing is, without Bitcoin, I would have just likely be one of those people who just went along with it and said, oh, that makes sense. Like, Bitcoin opened my eyes to this stuff.
There's definitely a lot of that effect. I mean, I kind of agree with you. Like, I'm not a conspiracy theorist either. I think most of the time, people are just kind of acting on their local incentives, and the simplest explanation is the correct one. And in this case, with all the stuff you can see, like, it's just kind of the evolution of these systems as they get bigger and bigger. They just have inertia, keep getting bigger and bigger, and people think, well, now we have the capability to track everyone's health, or we have the capability to to mess with everyone's money. So we should do this for the greater good. And it's not some like top down, we want to control the population. You
got something tapping your end,
but that is the result. Pardon?
You got something tapping your end. I'm hearing a dut on the mic.
No, sorry, I might have
on the table.
Tapping my coffee mug on the table.
Yeah, everyone will be hearing that. What the fuck's that tap? But no, like, I'm with you. Like, so I don't believe in the big conspiracy idea that a group of people are sat around a table saying, right, let's control the people, let's control their money, let's control their access. I think what happens is they deal with problems as they come in and they see benefits to them. I don't think they see the dystopian idea themselves.
Right, exactly.
Like the health passport thing makes rational sense. You can argue it in a rational way. I don't like it. I don't want it. I have not had the track and trace in the UK. I just don't like it. But you can see the logical argument in that, like, outside of the bunch of people who think COVID is just like a big hoax, and like it exists and people are dying. That's a fact. The numbers, you can argue over that. But I, at the same time, don't like the idea of being told to come to this pub, you have to prove you've had a vaccination. You have to have a scan for a couple of reasons. You know everywhere you're going is being tracked, and I just don't like that idea. It's just a bit too much for me. But I can see rationally how they make the arguments for it.
Yeah, totally. It's almost more insidious actually this way without the big conspiracy theory because it is just like, individual agencies, individual people even like making these calls on a one-off basis, and it just is kind of the natural progression of these systems when they get so large. So that's why I would one of the reasons I would argue for smaller government, but it's just that it's hard to break this inertia once it gets going because nobody's looking out for the system as a whole, and what this means if we do go down this pathway of everything being trackable and government having so much power, eventually you do get truly malicious actors in the mix, and things can go haywire pretty fast.
Yeah, I think what's happening in the US right now as well is like a good argument for it all, because this is where I'm like, so I always try and see both sides, Dan. I try and understand where left-wing people are coming from, where right-wing people are coming from. I'm considered right of centre in the UK. I think for people who are right of centre in the US, I'm considered left of centre. But I try and understand it all, and I can see why people who are more to the right are seeing these things happening and trying to fight against it. And I absolutely support that. But I also see what's happening with like this fight in the US right now, that I don't know, it's a perfect argument right now, like you just said, for less government, because if nobody's making the argument for less government, they're just fighting each other and creating this bigger government anyway. I mean, it's when people on the right say, they talk about defending Trump or defending the right, saying they offer more freedoms. They're still part of the same bullshit. Still the same apparatus.
Yep. I mean, you can just, if you want to just have like one metric to look at it, like just look at how much, what the U.S. budget is under any administration. Like it just keeps going up. Like nobody. Yeah. And that is, that number is, it's obviously, it tracks how important government is in the economy and therefore in your life. Like, I think you want that number to be smaller, but neither party makes it smaller.
No. And that's a good argument, because like when I talk to like the libertarians or start talking about anarchism, and I'm like, I don't know, I just struggle with buying it. I just want smaller government. And they're like, yeah, but you never get smaller government. I'm like, okay. And I'm always trying to figure out what's the end game here, because the end game looks like it will be all the anarchists can turn around and go, look, fucking told you, we told you.
Yeah.
We told you this was coming.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe maybe the end game is more sovereign individual like, where technology does kind of make the state less important, since more functions of government can be credibly done through tech. But who knows? Maybe, I don't know if things get a lot worse before that happens or not.
I've got to read that book. I've got that book here. I've got two books here. Keep looking me in the face. I've got the Sovereign Individual and The Fourth Turning.
Oh yeah, I haven't read Fourth Turning. I'm rereading Sovereign Individual right now. I read it a long time ago, but reading it like now that Bitcoin exists is a whole other view.
What, did you read Sovereign Individual before it existed?
A while ago. I skimmed it at the time, but yeah, like I read some of Neil Stephenson's work, and kind of in the early 2000s, after the internet bubble.
Okay. All right. Well, listen. Let's get back to Bitcoin. We just dipped back under 16,000 as we got a little bit into the weeds of politics, and now we're back over. I think we're going to get comfortably above that today. That's my prediction. So listen, looking ahead, what are the things that you obviously think about this a lot, Dan? Especially with your website and your work and your day job. Like, what are the things that are on your mind now with Bitcoin? Because we've got an evolving market. We're going to have a lot of new people coming into the market. One thing, for example, is custody. Like, where are you on custody? Because there is I would say, a growing acceptance that allowing others to custody for you, not custodying yourself, there's a growing acceptance from some people that that's not always the worst scenario.
Right.
I self-custody, and I always will, and I'd always recommend and try and help people to do it. But I can understand how some people don't want to, and it feels like we have better and more trusted custodians these days that you could perhaps trust. Do you give any weight to that, or you're like, no, fuck that, everyone should custody?
Well, no, so yes, in an ideal world, everyone should custody, but we don't live in that world. People have a hard time with with the tech that you need to understand and be very careful with to self custody. Even though hardware wallets are a great solution, I would argue that anyone who's kind of determined to take this on can do so with a hardware wallet with a reasonable risk profile. But that if you're just getting into the space, that you're probably not going to be that determined, and you want to get a little bit of exposure, which helps you have incentive to go deeper down the rabbit hole. So buying Bitcoin on and keeping it on some trusted platform makes sense in that environment. And yeah, the situation with custodians is much different than it used to be. So yeah, I'm okay with that. I think the key thing the Bitcoin ecosystem needs to maintain is the credible ability to take self-custody quickly. So if there's a ton of Bitcoin on exchanges, exchanges need to have allow withdrawals to self-custody addresses. Obviously that's become a topic in the ecosystem lately with with all the stuff around the Financial Action Task Force and the travel rule. Whether exchanges will be pressured from governments to disallow withdrawing to non KYC'd addresses. And I think we have to stay vigilant against that. Like, the industry needs to fight hard if there's ever serious pressure to disallow withdrawals to self custody addresses. So for me, it's all about that credible threat that needs to exist.
It might come, though, what you're saying. Like, one of the things I've run through my mind is that as much as we want and people want absolute privacy with Bitcoin, they want absolute, they just don't want the government knowing what they've got, what their balances are. They want to be able to manage their addresses. Is there a possibility that one of the trade-offs for not having Bitcoin banned is that it is fully tracked? I know that sounds awful and people don't want it, but is it just this digital gold? Okay, you might not have full privacy, but what you have is you do have this life raft from fiat money. Like, is that the trade-off that might end up happening?
Well, the trouble is that, like, you do need privacy to maintain the digital gold thesis, really. Like, you need.
Okay, explain that to me.
If you don't have privacy, the scenario you're insulating against, well, one of the scenarios you're insulating against is the government goes crazy with monetary policy and tries to ban all other financial life rafts. There are plenty of good arguments why that's actually impossible for them to do currently, but that is one of the scenarios you want to protect against. And if you don't have privacy, if the government knows where where all the Bitcoins are, the real names of people that hold it, then obviously they have great power to compel you. Get a knock on your door one day, and that's pretty compelling. So privacy is a component of this, maintaining a credible escape.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I don't know. I still think people can use it as a tool. It's just it's a inflationary hedge tool. The 21 million is still 21 million. Obviously, we want privacy. This travel rule thing, like, how serious is it? Like, how close is it to coming? Or are people fighting against it?
I haven't seen strong fighting against it yet. I mean, Coin Center has produced some good commentary, and I think people are gearing up definitely to fight if it gets more onerous. But I believe the current, I believe that what's happening currently is exchanges are trying to comply or are going to comply with the travel rule as currently stated, which says if a financial institution is transferring more than X amount of value to another financial institution, then the account at the other financial institution, the owner of that account needs to be known and included in the transaction, like actually shipped in the transaction data. So then there's always you can always track back the chain of if you're sending from one institution to another, that money is fully traceable throughout its entire transaction graph. But again, that's if you're sending money from Coinbase to Kraken or Kraken to Bitfinex or whatever, then it would have those KYC built in. As far as I'm aware, there's no nothing on the table preventing exchanges from allowing transfers to your own wallet that you control, like you as not a financial institution. So I think we're in where we are right now with how the regulations are written is fine. Yes, exchanges will start KYCing when you're transferring out to another institution, but as long as you can always transfer out to your own wallet, I don't think anything about Bitcoin's use cases or value prop or narratives is under threat.
All right, what else is on your mind? Anything else before we close out? Any big things you think people need to be thinking about?
Well, one thing as as these rallies get started, you may have a healthy amount of Bitcoin now, and you're storing it in a way that makes sense for the amount of money it's currently worth. But if things go crazy, you can find that it's a lot more money and a much bigger percent of your net worth real fast.
Mm-hmm.
And then suddenly you have a very inappropriate storage setup and security setup. So I would strongly advise people get out ahead of that, such that you're not like scared to turn on your laptop or something.
Well, there's another benefit to that as well. Casa are a sponsor, but before they became a sponsor, I signed up with them because I was worried about something similar. But one of the great things about that, for now, like I haven't shared how I've set my Casa up. But the only thing I would say is that if I want to move or sell any Bitcoin from my Casa, it's a multi-day operation now. Like I have to really plan it. So that makes it really hard to spend. So the more people who do this, the more it restricts supply as well, which is kind of like this added benefit. But it's a fucking pain for me to actually move any of my Bitcoin now, which is kind of a good I think it's a good thing for me.
That can definitely save people from themselves.
All right, man. But people need to get their security shit sorted. All right. Well, listen. Look, it's great to talk to you, Dan. Love these ones where I just shoot the shit with somebody. But people should definitely check out casebitcoin.com. Was case4bitcoin.com already gone?
No, I just liked the shorter URL.
You like the shorter URL, casebitcoin.com. All right. If people want to follow you as well, where do they find you?
Hit me up on Twitter. I am @Robustus, and that's it's the best way to get in touch.
Well, listen, the website's brilliant. I love it. I'm going to be sharing that out with some people, but I'll also share it in the show notes. And I wish you the best, man. And love chatting to you, dude. Take care.
No, thanks for having me. Good talking.